Hey, 42 here. In 1998, a Tennessee high school teacher declared to her students that she smelt something like gasoline. Within minutes, she was feeling nauseous, short of breath, and suffering from a headache. Soon after, many students in her class began to feel the same symptoms, and almost like a pandemic, the entire school was soon struck down with this same strange set of symptoms. But what was going on? The building was evacuated and emergency services called in to deal with the sick students and staff, and an investigation was undertaken. With over 78 individuals admitted to the emergency room and 38 hospitalised, this was a mystery that had to be solved. However, that would be easier said than done. All the blood tests came back clean. Investigations into the building found nothing, and every single person admitted to hospital survived. So what the hell happened? The answer was fear. Writing in the New England Journal of Medicine, epidemiologist Dr. Timothy F. Jones described the incident as a mass psychogenic illness where the teacher, the students, and eventually the whole school were infected by a fear of a toxic substance they believed was there, but it wasn't. And their fear was so palpable, it manifested physical symptoms and spread from one individual to the next until it had taken down the entire school. It turns out then that fear, like laughter, the flu, and chlamydia, is incredibly contagious. But why, and how does it work? The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines fear as an unpleasant, often strong emotion caused by anticipation or awareness of danger. It's a gripping, horrible feeling that seizes the entire body, and your brain begs you to flee from harm, just like when you see an attractive woman. We all know what fear feels like. We've been feeling it our entire lives, and we all want to be free of it, but as you will soon learn, A, it's not possible, and B, if you could erase fear from your life, it would actually be a terrible idea. The story of the fearless warrior who confronts the unknown is the most ancient we have. The oldest known story is Mesopotamia's Gilgamesh, slaying monsters and seeking to cheat death. The oldest known story in English is the Geat's Beowulf ripping Grendel's arm off, hunting his mother down in a cave and slaying a dragon. And even the modern comic book story of the Batman has the hero draping himself in his worst fear in order to weaponize it. Fear, and mastery of it, has been a permanent mainstay in human culture. It is one of our oldest, most persistent enemies, and we all carry it with us in some way, every single day. There are thousands upon thousands of phobias, and humanity has an inexplicable predilection towards giving them all Greek names. From the ridiculous alectorophobia, the fear of chickens, to the very real and almost universally terrifying thalassophobia, which is the fear of deep water and the ungodly, unknowable evil that lurks within it. But there is a reason why there are so many phobias, and why some of them are so absurd. Studies have shown that human beings can teach themselves, or be taught, to be afraid of just about anything. One not-so-ethical study, called the Little Albert Experiment, saw a child conditioned by scientists to fear anything fluffy. The method for doing this was terrifying the poor child every time he touched a fluffy rat. The result? He started to shit his pants at the sight of anything fluffy, despite having no notion of it beforehand. This is likely why so many people who have a bad encounter with a dog early in life harbour such terror towards them later. Although admittedly the Little Albert Experiment was so widely immoral, bizarre and unrigorous that it would struggle to hold up to modern scientific scrutiny. Yet the staggering variety of phobias does lend some credence to its original point. However, whilst there are many fears, it is worth noting that certain fears, such as a fear of meteors, getting kidnapped, or fairies, generally decline with age, perhaps due to the fact that we go through life realising that these events rarely, if ever, happen. Although you should probably stay on your guard for a fairy kidnapping being halted by a meteor strike, because you just never know. The experience of fear involves a substantial portion of your brain's functional capacity. Chief amongst these is your amygdala, a little section of the brain that rests just behind your eye and across from each ear. But although these two almond-shaped nuclei clusters are small, they are exceptionally powerful. They are almost entirely responsible for your brain's alarm system, constantly scanning for threats and signalling the body to respond. And although they do have other functions, such as triggering aggression and anxiety, their fear response is perhaps the most palpable, and in many ways, beneficial, as it is likely our amygdala's itchy trigger finger that got us safely through a time when our world was ridden with Homotherium latidans. In short, without the amygdala, you and humanity itself wouldn't have much of a future. But the brain itself is incredibly complex, and its response to fear involves more than just the amygdala. In fact, the brain is composed of around 100 billion nerve cells with 100 trillion communicating connections that help us to think, sense, eat, sleep, and find porn on the internet. Whilst many of these communications are conscious, such as turning left or right in a car, other communications produce what is known as an autonomic response. These unconscious processes include the functioning of vital organs, such as the heart and lungs. But fear is also one of these autonomic responses. We don't choose to feel afraid, we simply feel afraid. And we have next to no control over how long it lasts or how intense it feels. So for those of you trying to will your way out of being afraid, good luck. There are about 4.54 billion years of evolution working against you. Alongside the amygdala's perma-scanning alarm system, there are other elements of the brain that play a role in fear. The brain stem makes us freeze, the hippocampus activates our fight or flight response, the hypothalamus gets our adrenals firing hormones into our system, the prefrontal cortex helps us figure out what the hell is going on by interpreting what's happening and comparing it to the past, and the thalamus, not to be confused with the Thalmor, who are the arseholes from Skyrim, receives raw data from our various senses and sends processed information to either the sensory cortex, where we have more conscious control, or the amygdala, where it's pretty much a dice roll as to whether we shit our pants or not, so I guess it is actually a bit of an arsehole as well. If the cortex is our thinking brain, then the amygdala, hypothalamus and hippocampus, which help compose the limbic system, are our emotional brain. And it is this dichotomy between conscious thinking decisions and unconscious emotional reactions, which makes fear such a difficult experience to control. The experience of fear can be broken down into three distinct components: context, distraction, and social learning. Context plays a huge role in how we experience fear, and is why controlled fear, such as scary movies, can be an exhilarating experience instead of an upsetting one. When fear sends us into a high arousal state, our thinking brain provides our emotional brain with information as to what the context of our fear is. If we are safe, then we can quickly shift our experience of fear into one of, say, excitement, such as the terror felt with going over the edge of a roller coaster, only to experience a rush of excitement when we realise we're safe, secure, and on a ride. However, if the context is a 20-foot great white shark tearing into our upper thigh with 300 razor-sharp teeth, then the context would be a fairly appropriate, I'm going to die now. This ability to shift one's perspective is helped by the fact that although the fear response begins in the amygdala, it travels through various thinking and emotional brain systems and your entire body to help you rally an appropriate defense or flight response. Although in truth, what defense is there when a ravenous 1,500 kilogram fish hits you at 35 miles per hour? The amygdala, for instance, reacts whenever you see a human face. If the face is showing fear or aggression, the reaction will be more pronounced. This then leads your pupils to dilate, the brain to go into alert mode, non-vital organs slow down, more blood goes to your skeletal muscles, and your breathing heightens. This is what I unofficially call battle mode. Like any animal, we also learn to fear things as we go through life. When we experience something frightening at a young age, we carry this experience with us for years to come, informing our choices and even our personality. An obvious example of this is a fear of dogs, but another, more abstract example would be abandonment. If you experience a fleeting moment of abandonment as a child, this fear can stay with you your entire life, informing your behaviours in romantic relationships. But uniquely amongst humans is that we can learn to fear things from the written and spoken word. If we're about to swim at the beach and someone screams, "Shark!" we'll likely change our mind. Likewise, a large sign warning us of snakes in the tall grass will make us think twice about straying from the path. In either case, simply hearing or seeing a warning can be enough to trigger our body to go into alert, battle mode state. Lastly, social learning has a huge impact on what we learn to fear. Spending time around dangerous animals that are docile in the hands of trainers can drastically alter our reaction to the same animal, such as a tame lion versus a wild one. Although our initial reaction will be one of fear and avoidance, once we see the animal is mostly harmless, we will begin to relax around it. Fear, also through the way it takes over our entire body and floods it with hormones, distracts us and brings us into the here and now. For an animal plagued with insecurity, wandering attention, and addiction, this can be a welcome plunge into extreme clarity and focus. This is perhaps why, alongside the addictive nature of adrenaline, people become so addicted to experiencing fear in controlled circumstances such as bungee jumping or skydiving. Our perception plays a large role in our relationship with fear. As with the example of the tame lion, we can understand something if our thinking brain assumes it to be safe, but if our emotional brain is overwhelmed with fear, we won't go anywhere near it. You see this all the time with people afraid of deep water. Although everyone knows the odds of a shark attack are astronomically low, many people become deeply afraid as soon as they can't see the bottom and will rapidly swim for shore. This is why there are so many cliché horror films that revolve around deep water. They are usually filmed in such a way that overwhelms the emotional brain so much that the thinking brain's knowledge of the movie's artificiality ceases to be a factor. In fact, the emotional mind's grip on our experience of fear is so strong that it can lead us to make completely irrational decisions, well beyond being afraid of the statistically unlikely. People who have a strong fearful reaction towards deep water don't just fear the sea and its predators, they also fear lakes and swimming pools, where their biggest enemy would be a sturgeon or someone having a piss. Even though there's zero possibility of something terrible lurking beneath, the body can inexplicably act as if there definitely is, and we can almost feel its presence below us. We even have similar reactions when watching films like Paranormal Activity or Hereditary. Even though we're relatively certain that ghosts don't exist, we'll find ourselves checking over our shoulder as we head to bed, afraid of an eerie feeling that something supernatural is behind us. Irrational or not, this isn't something our thinking brain can actually control or fix. Fear also has a marked effect on our ability to perceive time. Or, more accurately, it can make time seem slower than it actually is. A study by the University of New South Wales discovered that when novice skydivers are preparing for a jump, they perceive the preparation time to be far longer than it actually is. Because their body is hopped up on a chemical soup of hormones and has been put into fight or flight mode, they perceive time to be passing more slowly, which unfortunately will only serve to heighten their dread of the upcoming fall. But the experience of fear doesn't come and go with the event that triggers it. In fact, fear can stay with you long after the event itself, and in extremely destructive ways. It's been recorded that 8% of people suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder during their lives, and almost 25% of people will suffer from a form of anxiety, which is in essence a permanent form of mild fear. These events are processed as traumas and linger within people's lives, causing them symptoms from anxiety, sadness, insomnia, and continued experience of terror, sometimes in the form of vivid flashbacks known as flashbulb memories. It is not uncommon for people who have suffered a home invasion to become convinced there is someone in their home when there isn't, or war veterans to vividly recall a traumatic experience and all the terror that came with it. An experience which can lead them to live in a hyper-vigilant state, on alert for a threat which is no longer there. PTSD symptoms can last for years, and in some cases can continue to get worse and worse, becoming far more unsettling than the initial trauma ever was. It is estimated that 11 to 20% of Operation Iraq Freedom veterans suffered from PTSD. 12% of Gulf War veterans, and roughly 15 to 30% of Vietnam War veterans. In the general population, it is estimated that 5% suffer from PTSD at any given time. But whilst PTSD may be one of the worst side effects of fear, are there any positives? It turns out there are. Studies have shown that low levels of fear can provoke the right amount of the stress hormone, cortisol, to be released, which, in the correct doses, can improve your ability to learn and enhance your memory. Sounds good, right? Well, before you start revising for an exam inside a grizzly bear enclosure, it's worth knowing that too much cortisol can wipe out your ability to learn and remember entirely. So maybe revise just outside the bear enclosure instead. But by far, the main benefit of fear is that it's there to keep you alive. Sure, it might stop you from meeting the woman of your dreams, but it'll also keep you alive in many ways because sometimes women can be the death of you. That's what it's designed to do, and as we've learned, it does it well. So next time you're scared, be thankful. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please consider supporting me on Patreon because it really helps me to continue to make these videos. You can find the link in the description. Also, you can get your hands on a first edition signed copy of my new book, Stick a Flag in It, by heading on over to Unbound Publishing via the link in the description and pre-ordering yours today. Thank you.